Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wings for Life tonight. I'm Ann Edenfield-Sweet. I'm the executive director and founder of Wings. And tonight, I'm talking about the homecoming. For those of you that don't know much about me, the reason I started Wings in the first place is because my first husband ended up going to prison. And during that time, while he was incarcerated, I ended up writing a book, and it's called Family Arrested: How to Survive the Incarceration of a Loved One. Now, when it came to the homecoming chapter, I hadn't written that yet until he came home. I had started it, but it took me 4 years, the 4 years that we were together after he came home, to write that chapter in the book. And actually, he got out in 1993, and I'm still writing that chapter, and he died 2 years ago. So the homecoming is something that just kind of goes on and on and on, and because of the impact of incarceration, it never goes away. And unfortunately, our marriage didn't survive. Typically, I don't tell people that, but I want to tell you that at the beginning of this talk. So as you hear me talk about things, I'm hoping I'm going to share some things that might help you, and it might help you as the returning citizen coming home, maybe be better prepared for that. Maybe loved ones be better prepared. That's the whole purpose of this, trying to help you. And I'm hoping that through my failures, that maybe you will learn some things that might be able to keep your families connected and strengthen your families. So I remember a prison chaplain one time telling me that he estimated that 98% of marriages fail before or during incarceration. And I said, well, it won't be mine. And then he said of that 2%, only 2% that he estimated that made it all the way through, and the inmate came home to a married spouse, he said, I would estimate that 98% of those marriages are going to fail. I said, well, it won't be mine. Well, unfortunately, it was mine too. So again, I hope you're going to learn something tonight that will help you stay stronger, keep your marriages together. If you're coming home to your fiance or your girlfriend, that maybe this will strengthen those relationships. So, and hopefully help your children too. Now, you know at Wings, we always talk about assets. So tonight we're talking about the interpersonal personal competence asset, and this is where you have empathy, sensitivity, and friendship. And this is where we want you to learn about talking about your daily life with your loved one, that you could talk to your loved one that's incarcerated, find out what prison life is like. I thought I really knew. I guess I found out I didn't know anything. And then we need to talk about what, as parents or as the adults, what do you hope to have happen? And for the children too, when your loved one comes home. So what does the loved one want to do, and what does the family want to do? And all family members need to be part of that discussion about the homecoming. I thought, again, I had done everything. And I found out, boy, I certainly wasn't prepared. And you need to be able to discuss, address, and identify issues, feelings, and concerns well in advance of the homecoming. That's why I think this workshop is so important, and I hope it will be helpful to you. And remember that all family members, all of them, need a voice in discussing the homecoming, the expectations, and whatever specific plans that you have. So let's discuss some of the issues that might affect the returning citizen about the homecoming. First of all, grieving friends left to prison or halfway houses. My husband was in prison for 6 years. Some people are in prison for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and are getting out. How are they going to adjust to life on the outside? And they might be missing friends and people that they got to know at the halfway house. And now they're coming home, and they might need some space too. It might be way too chaotic in your household if a whole bunch of people are running around. We had 4 boys. Probably in retrospect, it was pretty chaotic for my husband. The returning citizen may want to set boundaries. He might not want, or she might not want, to be out in public. I know going to grocery stores and Walmarts and big places like that, Costco's, heaven forbid. My husband, it took him a long time to want to go to a place like that. My husband was always one that wanted his back to the wall, but even before he went into prison. But you always hear about inmates saying, I got to watch my back, because they do have to watch their back. They don't know who might come up behind them, might hit them, knock them out, fight with them, whatever. They've got to be watching their back. So don't be surprised if they need to be in the corners, against the walls, and kind of feel like they are in control of their situation. Identification. If at all possible, encourage your loved one to get Social Security. Make sure you get a Social Security card for him. Mail it into the prison if he doesn't already have it. And try to have them get their IDs while they're incarcerated. We're working with the Corrections Department on that. We've been working on this for 26 years since I've been doing Wings, but we're still working, and everybody knows the importance of your ID. You have to have ID. When you get out, you've got to have ID. So be prepared before you get out. Think about your housing. Are they coming home to you, or where are they going home to? They are going to come and inspect your house. They have the right to go into your house at any time. Be prepared for that. And jobs. Probation and parole, they're going to require that somebody get a job. So help them. Who do you know? What can they do? Be prepared so when they get out, they're not just coming out cold, but you've already perhaps even helped them find a job. These are all things you can help. One thing that I discovered that I really didn't understand is that life stops in the inmate's mind. They remember it the way it was the day they left. Well, one of my sons has painted his walls dark green of all the crazy things. And so when my husband came home, first thing is, Tommy, you painted your walls. What, how come it looks different around here? We had rearranged the furniture. Everything looked different to him. We drove around town, and in 6 years, you'd be amazed at how many things that I didn't realize had been torn down, put up, whatever. And it was a different world to him. And he had only been gone 6 years. And some other things that are even probably more important than the outside world, relationships have been stagnant. Now, see, for me, I was talking to him all the time. I went to visit about every 4 to 6 weeks, whatever I could barely afford, but I went anyway. But really, our relationships were stagnant. I had very unrealistic expectations of his homecoming, and I think he did too. For me, it was like he's coming home. Yay, everything is going to be perfect. It's going to be back like it was. And for him too, he pictured the boys 6 years younger. We now had teenagers. They were their own people. They wanted to do their own things. Returning citizens, they might want to buy gifts and do things for their children. Boy, let me tell you what happened to me. I ended up with a $3.5 million IRS lien, and even when he came home, we both still owed $3.5 million. But I had been able to save one credit card. I had been living on cash ever since he went to prison. And this one credit card I paid off. I would charge a little bit on gas or whatever, and every month I paid it off. So he asked me for the credit card one day because he was going to go out and he needed to buy something. I don't know. And I didn't have cash enough for him what he thought he was going to need, and I gave him the credit card. Oh, my goodness. Well, he used that credit card all right. He came home and he spent over $1,200. In those days, boom boxes were really popular. So did he buy one boom box? Oh, no. All 4 boys got boom boxes. All 4 boys got brand new clothes. They had been using and wearing secondhand yard sale clothes, of course, ever since he went to prison, or hand-me-downs. I couldn't go out and buy anything. And he went out and spent over $1,200. By the time I came home that day, all the boxes had been torn apart. The boom boxes set up neat to the boys by their beds. How could I return these boom boxes that the boxes were in shreds? And the clothes, all the tags pulled off, the boys wearing all the clothes, they were so excited about other things. It took me over 2 years to pay that credit card off. And that credit card at $1,200, I don't even want to think about how much I paid in interest over those 2 years with his one frivolous time of spending. So please talk over money and don't just give a credit card. I know he had been an airline captain. He was used to going out and spending and buying and doing everything and buying what he wanted. And of course he wanted to buy something for the boys. I wanted to do the very same thing, but we didn't have the money. And he went out and about destroyed me. And children and the spouses might fantasize about the perfect parent and have really unrealistic expectations. I guess I did that. I mean, all the time that we visited and talked to him, I just thought he was the same man. I just couldn't wait for him to come home. I just thought everything was going to be perfect when he got home. And boy, when he got home, it was a living hell. At the dinner table, it was either, boys, yeah, run off, there's no curfew, you could do whatever you want to do, or sit at the table, eat every last bean on your plate. You're not getting up till that plate is empty and licked clean. I mean, he was either a tyrant, or he was just this, like the greatest, sugar daddy in the world. Here, you can have everything you want. It really became a nightmare for me. Well, you've got to think about what you want to do. And so jobs are going to be very important. I do workshops on jobs. I hope you'll go and look at one that I've done, Guaranteed Ways to Get a Job. But the first thing that I need to tell you, when you get a job, it has to be something that you want to do. Because if you get a job and you are miserable, you are going to not do a good job. You're either going to get fired or quit because you're going to be so miserable. Even if you're starting off sweeping the floor somewhere, but it's in a field, like maybe it's hospitality, and maybe you're the cleaning person around the hotel, or you're the maid cleaning rooms. Well, maybe your goal is to be the manager someday. And you're not going to be learning, in that position all the time, but learn that position, learn that entire field so you can rise up. But don't take that job if you hate hospitality and you hate dealing with the public. So think about you're getting a job, and everybody is going to find you have a criminal background. So you need to learn to say, I'm a returning citizen. And that means that you have come back, you have made some mistakes in your life, you have paid your debt to society, and you're coming back to make a difference and make a change. But just know they are going to find that criminal background, so don't even begin to think that you're going to hide it, because with computers today, they're going to find anything and everything. Now, I've got some advice for the actual family members to address. First of all, I suggest that you establish house rules. And what I mean, first of all, by that is treat your loved one as an honored guest, because they are a guest in your home. They have not been in your home for a long time, and they need to act like an honored guest too. So an honored guest doesn't come in and trash the place, take out food and leave the kitchen a mess, not help with laundry, not help with anything, and just expect to be pampered, and they're putting their feet up and not doing anything. No, they're an honored guest, but they need to also be part of that family. And tough love, I cannot express enough, tough love, how important it is to establish those guidelines right off the bat. Now, what are the family rules with the parent, caregiver, and the returning citizens? Okay, I suggest that you sit down with your kids, first of all, with the spouse. Say, okay, I have been the boss the whole time. Here are the rules that I've set up. Now, they are going to manipulate, and they are going to go to you and say, well, mommy said, or daddy said, or whatever, but let's have a rule that you come to both of us, and we are going to establish what that final rule is going to be. Not to say, well, mommy said, so okay, yeah, sure, because that's what they're always going to say. Or daddy said we could do this, and then put me in an awkward position. The boys know what the rules are right now. Let's talk to my husband. Okay, we are going to establish these rules. These are what they are. But the boys are not going to manipulate the two of us. But then sit down with the kids and say, okay, daddy is home, dad is home, whatever ages the kids are, and here are the rules that we are establishing. We have the same rules after school. Get your homework done, your sports, you got to be on time. We eat dinner all together as a family. Whatever your rules are. Bedtime is, you're not going to be out on school nights after X time, and it's for school events or sports. It's not just out to hang out. Weekends, we've got certain guidelines and rules. Sit down and establish those new rules so everybody knows what the rules are, because believe me, those kids are going to manipulate, and they're going to say, but daddy said, and they're going to put you, and you're going to be the bad guy. And believe me, I don't think there's one spouse or person at home, grandmother raising grandkids, whatever, that the kids don't come home and manipulate and try to pull the same stunt. So establish the rules. Discuss the money. It is so important that your loved one understand money. Now, there used to be phone cards, and still you can put money on phones and things like that. And I told you already the story about the credit card with me. Establish what the rules are, and that this is how much money we have. And if you want to go out and you want to go shopping, okay, this is what we've got for groceries this month, unless you could bring some money in. And this is what we've got. So please, you've got to be very careful. And my husband, again, was used to living on a very, very high income. That's the income that we used to have. And suddenly we're living on $800 a month. And now he's coming home. And then we had to pay bills for his halfway house. When he first went to the halfway house, then you have to pay those percentages out of supposedly the salary that you're making. And he said he was in real estate. And so, of course, did he make any money in real estate? No. So I had to pay that 0.25% of what supposedly he was making in real estate to the halfway house. So that came out of the money that we had. I mean, suddenly money was a huge, huge, huge issue, and he didn't get it. And he was not about to live on the lifestyle that I had been forced to live on and the boys for 4 years. Now, dating each other in sexual relationships. What I really realized is, even though we had been together at that point, I think we had been together we were together totally in our marriage 26 years. So it would have been 22 years that we were together at that point by the time he came home. And I thought, boy, this is a man I know. He's the father of our 4 boys. But boy, I suggest that you date each other. Get to know each other again. You are different people. And the sexually transmitted diseases that are just rampant in the prisons, I would suggest getting tested, having him or her get tested. You be careful. You just don't know. You don't want to have somebody come home from prison and now you're dealing with sexually transmitted diseases as well. And your sexual relationships, it might be a little awkward because now you're having fights over the kids, over the money, over the rules, over the probation officers and all of the things, the rules that are going on. And now, and then he expects you to just be dropping, everything you're doing at his whim. It can start to create some problems. So there are a lot of things that you have to address. And remember that your family has been arrested too. That's why the title of my book, Family Arrested. Because even though we weren't in prison, we were impacted by his incarceration every single day of our lives. How people treated us, where we lived, how much money we had, the stigmas for the boys in school, all of those things. And see, he was in prison. Now, he had his own stigmas, but he had no idea on the outside. And now when he came home, oh boy, now we had to deal with that. Now, how are you going to celebrate the homecoming? Now, I always say, are you going to tie the yellow ribbon around the old oak tree? No, I didn't want to do that. In fact, I had moved to another neighborhood, and people really, when people asked me where my husband was, I said, well, we're separated right now. Well, we were. He was in prison. Why do I have to get into why we were separated? They saw a wedding ring on my hand. Yeah, we're separated. Well, that ended the conversation. I didn't have to get into all those difficult questions. So now the homecoming, and now this man is coming home. Well, where is he coming from? And all these other things. And what happened for me is I had a job in a church as a youth director. And when my husband came home, the new pastor in front of the whole staff said, well, then I can no longer be your pastor. So now I even lost my job as youth director in the church because the pastor couldn't be my pastor. How could I stay there and my 4 boys worship with this man as a pastor when he couldn't even be our pastor? So it was a very difficult time. But I planned a special meal. And boy, did I plan that special meal. You might want to plan a special meal. But again, one time I was doing this at this talk at the Santa Fe Penitentiary, and I said to one of the guys, well, what do you want to do when you go home? Well, my old lady. And I said, now, wait a second. Don't call anybody an old lady. No one wants to be called an old lady. Certainly not me, and certainly not me now either. But my old lady, she's going to fix my favorite food. And I said, well, how long have you been in prison? 22 years. And I said, well, do you really think she remembers what your favorite food is? Well, she better remember. I said, you better tell her. And you'd better let her know, if you want enchiladas, do you want red or green, or do you want Christmas? What do you want? But you'd better not say, fix my favorite food, and then expect somebody to know. You'd better plan it. Now, do you want a party for family and friends? We didn't do that. We just had a private family gathering with the boys and with me and with my husband. You do what you think is best, but I wouldn't suggest, and you certainly don't want to buy the good old boys and the people that got him into trouble in the first place, because oftentimes that's what's going to cause problems in the future. You don't want to do that. And tell the world, I don't know. I certainly didn't go out to tell the world. I kind of kept that quiet. And so I did a quiet welcome, number 5, quietly welcomed him home with no fanfare. And maybe there are other ideas. Of course there are other ideas. Whatever you want to do, but make sure you've discussed it with your loved one that's incarcerated, with your kids, with your family, and think it through. Do you want everybody to know that somebody is coming home from prison? Now, let me tell you some stories about control. Oh boy. He walked in the house and he flipped the light switch. Now, we were living on $800 a month. Flipping a light switch, the boys knew you don't flip the light switch and turn it on and off, because that costs a lot of electricity. You know, you leave it on there. But oh no, he flipped it on and off. I said, what are you doing? He flipped it again. I said, what are you doing? Next thing you know, he's walking around the house, flipping switches, flipping switches, flipping switches. Next thing I know, the boys, ha ha, Mommy, look at me, and they're flipping switches. I'm having a fit. 5 minutes into the house, and I'm having a fit with him flipping switches. I didn't know till 5 years later, and I was at our jail in Albuquerque, and I said to the guys in one of the pods, I said, it's kind of dark in here. Could somebody turn up the lights? And they started laughing at me, and they said, well, we can't turn up lights. I said, what do you mean you can't turn up the lights? Well, the officers are in charge of lights. Now, how would I know that as a wife of an inmate, that he had not had control of lights for 6 years? Had I known, I would have said, let's have a light switching party. Come on, let's have some fun with the lights, but then let's stop it. Instead, this went on for about a month. Every time he'd see me, he'd kind of ha, 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 and flip the switches. And I was furious, furious. Coffee, first morning home. Now, coffee was a real premium in our household. I didn't drink much coffee. I couldn't afford coffee. But I made a whole pot of coffee. I brought him breakfast in bed. This was our big thing, always, birthdays and special occasions. Breakfast in bed, and here's your big steaming pot of coffee. And I give it to him, and he takes one sip, and he says, oh, this is way too weak. And of course, I made coffee quite weak for me because I had to stretch it. He went to the kitchen, dumped out the cup, and dumped out the whole pot of coffee. Didn't even ask me if I wanted the coffee. And he said, this is horrible. And he used up all the coffee we had to make the next pot of coffee. Do you think I was happy? No. We got in the car in the radio station. The boys and I had worked out a deal. 4 boys and me, 5 people, 5 days. We each had a day. We each got to choose what we wanted to listen to on the radio or on through the station. Tapes or whatever, whatever kind of music you wanted. Oh no, we got in the car with him. He was the boss. There was one person happy in that car. The 5 of us were furious because he didn't respect us. The remote control, same thing. TV, he was in control. Well, no, nope, I'm watching, and he had control. Grocery stores. I've already told you about the restaurant. We went into, well, anytime we went into the restaurant, his back was to the wall, but the grocery store, he went to the grocery store, and he had been an international airline pilot here. He went in the grocery store, and he just freaked out. It was just too much. He said, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And I realized, okay, this is too much. It's just, he needed some time to adjust to all of that. Now, everyone needs support. So I suggest that you come to Wings for Life. Whether we've got guys listening tonight behind bars, our programs are going into MDC, I suggest that the families listen, the kids listen, and the adults, because we can help you with some of these issues. Consider counseling. We went to counseling. I paid for it myself out of my own pocket. We went to one counseling session. It was so awful. And the counselor even said, he's not doing anything. There's no point you wasting your money to come back. So we never went back. There are places to get free counseling. I didn't know about them. Help. If your loved one has any kind of addictive problem, get them to AANA and any other kind of programs. They need that programming. And get involved in positive activities. Get out. Of course, I suggest a faith community, but get out and start creating something new that you could do together. You're meeting new people together, because no one wanted to meet me. I was a single person with 4 kids. I mean, who wants to be around her? Now I was a couple again. Now I could be accepted and be welcomed. Now, issues to consider about a halfway house. Your loved ones oftentimes have to go to halfway houses. What are the requirements for payment in a halfway house? I already told you that my husband, I had to pay, and it was a quarter of whatever supposedly salary. So I think he said he was making $1,200 a month, and I had to pay $400 out each month while he was supposedly working there. What is he going to have to do and work? What about the curfews? What about the UAs? The meetings that are mandated, and what about transportation? Do you have 2 cars? Are you going to have to maneuver with the cars? These are all huge issues that need to be addressed. Now, probation and parole. Now, this is the first thing I always teach anybody that comes into our office. A probation parole officer is not the enemy. You need to turn them into your best friend. You need to report every single thing to your probation officer, anything that happens. And they need to understand the rules. The family needs to understand the rules. You can't have guns, alcohol. You can't have somebody throwing a beer can in your trash can. They could go through it and they could find that. That's expected. If the person on parole is out, be early. Always be early for meetings and be early for things, and do not break curfew. If you know you're going to be late, you've had a flat tire, the bus broke down, the bus was delayed, be prepared. New Year's Eve. We were even in bed that first New Year's Eve, and guess who knocked at our door right at midnight? His parole officer. He had to blow a UA, and they did all kinds of testing. New Year's Eve, they also did it on Christmas Eve, and they did it on his birthday. And call the PO if anything happens that's unexpected or could be a problem for you. Turn them into your ally. They've always said to me that it takes more paperwork to send somebody back than to keep them out. So make it easy for them. Don't give them more paperwork. Now, I'm going to share a few things here. Actually, we've got some questions I'm going to leave on the screen, but I'm going to share a couple things before I close. I was speaking one time, and I had asked people in an audience if they would write to me and tell me about their homecoming. And I'm going to read a couple things here that were shared to me from a woman. This is back in 2014. It doesn't matter. It's at the time, her words are ageless. I remember the tears rolling down my cheeks as I wrote this talk. I would love to tell you that it was like a fairy tale ending when my husband came home from prison, but it wasn't. Our expectations were very different from reality. I knew it would be difficult for him to find a job, but neither of us realized how difficult it would be. It was difficult to reintegrate into society with the family unit, but neither of us realized how difficult that would be either. I believe we need to take a close look at our expectations for a happily ever after homecoming. She goes on to say, he absolutely did not have a firm moral foundation. Prison doesn't provide any real rehabilitation to provide them with that moral foundation. They rely on their own twisted rules or honor code based on respect, which is created by other people with no moral foundation. They are so set on respect, prison respect, but they fail to respect themselves or their families, their marriages, or authority. They are set up to fail. Let's see. She writes about the first time she caught him texting another woman. He told me that he didn't know how to be the man that I wanted him to be because he was raised by a liar, a cheater, and a gambler. He couldn't be the honorable man I wanted him to be. How many men have that same story to tell or have the reality that there is no man involved with their upbringing to teach them how to be real men? And this is so true. So guys that are in prison, you haven't had very many positive role models, if any at all. How do you know what is right and what's expected? And she talks about men of character or integrity. That's ultimately our expectation of them. We expect them to be truthful, to do the right thing, because their decisions don't affect just them, they affect us as well. They all have good intentions when they get out, but without a firm foundation, they end up down the same road and put themselves in prison to begin with. My husband expected to pick up where he left off, okay, there you go again, with old associations and old friendships. He expected that he could handle being around the same people who put him in prison. He expected to be stronger because of his experience in prison. He didn't want to go back, but the inability to change playgrounds and playmates ultimately led to our separation, a placement in a halfway house, then county jail, where he is now facing 50 years for the same thing that put him in prison in the first place. Dividing responsibility never really happened. It was his total sense of irresponsibility that led him to prison the first time and put him in county this time. He wanted the perks of a family without the responsibility that comes with being a husband and a father. Giving each other space and time is difficult because there is an inherent lack of trust on our parts. My lack of trust wasn't just around other women. I didn't trust him to do the right thing on his own. I ended up playing the part of his conscience. I was like Jiminy Cricket on his shoulder, always telling him what to do, always nudging him in the right direction. The resentment on his part grew because he felt I was acting like his mother. There can be exceptions to the rule. The truth is, however, that prisons usually don't rehabilitate. Oh, I think I've already shared that with you. And then finally, you need a support system. You need to get a support system in place for your loved one and your family. There are others out there just like you. We all need to stick together for the good of our families and the good of our loved ones. Strong support system is key to a smooth transition. Have your loved ones get connected with a mentor or a sponsor, such as AANA or WINGS. There are mentors available through faith-based organizations as well. And lastly, she said, I truly wanted to stand up here today and tell you that it's all going to be okay, that your happily ever after is just around the corner. But that's not reality. Be prepared for a hard road. Don't be afraid to ask for help from the people around you, but most importantly, from God. And then she said, God bless you all. So she had some words there that I would agree with. Homecoming is not easy. I thought everything was going to be perfect when my husband came home. I just thought, wow, I can't wait. The boys are going to have a father. I'm going to have a husband again. Everything is going to be great. And it wasn't. So I hope for you that it will be better than the experience that I had. And when we go to the breakout rooms, I want you to talk about some of the things that I've shared, but then also if you have come home, some of the things that you've experienced. What went well? What would you have changed? What would you suggest for somebody else? And I always close with a story. So let's close with a story tonight on a more positive note. Here is a great recipe. Fold 2 hands together and express a dash of sorrow. Marinate it overnight and work on it tomorrow. Chop 1 grudge in tiny pieces, add several cups of love, dredge with a large-sized smile, mix with the ingredients above. Dissolve the hate within you by doing a good deed. Cut in and help your friend if he or she should be in need. Stir in laughter, love, and kindness. From the heart it has to come. Toss with genuine forgiveness and give your friends some. The amount of people served will depend on you. It can serve the whole wide world if you really want it to. So let's concentrate on the good recipe. When your loved ones come home, let's tie in that love and that compassion and that empathy and that understanding and that openness and that honesty. And let's keep those marriages together, those relationships and families strong. And that's what we want for you. And I hope you'll keep coming back to Wings, because we're going to keep teaching you all those ways that we can help strengthen you. So now, for those of you who are on Facebook with us tonight, this is the end of our program. But for those of you that are on Zoom, stay tuned, because we're going straight to breakout rooms. Thanks, everybody, and good night. Now, issues that a returning citizen might have about the homecoming. First of all, they might really be grieving friends that they had and people that they knew in prison, because that was the life that they knew. My husband was only in prison for 6 years. I say only because a lot of people are getting out 30, 40 years they've been in prison. Think about that and think about their life. Do they really know the people they're coming home to? Even after 6 years, I discovered that we really didn't know each other. The person coming home is probably going to need space. And what I found out from my husband, he was always one that liked to have his back to the wall in a restaurant and facing the door and things like that. But in prison, I just have learned and have heard thousands of times that you have to keep, protect your back, watch your back. So if somebody comes home, they're probably going to want to always be in the corner against the wall. They're going to want to have a good vantage point of what's going on out in front of them. They are not going to want to be in the middle of something. So just keep that in mind, because that's going to be important to think about. The returning citizen may want to set boundaries, and you might want to set boundaries for them, because it's going to be hard for them to just have open spaces. So we've got a beep going on here. Is that beep? Nick, you'll have to edit this out. Is that beep is it interfering with what we're hearing here?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have to stop, because we can't have that beeping going on. Oh boy, we're going to have a problem here tonight, aren't we? He said he was hearing it. It didn't hear it? Yeah.
Or she has a walker going to her car. Let me get the gate for you. Let me get this for you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start at this slide that I have up there, okay? Okay.